Entire cities lie silent beneath the sands. The story of humanity is far more complex than our textbooks ever told us. This journey through 25 lost civilizations will give you a completely new understanding of human history. We will uncover societies with technology that rivals our own and explore why thriving cultures suddenly vanished. How could a civilization master urban planning 5,000 years ago only to disappear without a trace? What hidden knowledge is still locked away in their undeciphered scripts? The answers force us to rethink everything we know about our past. What does the fate of these ancient peoples suggest about our own future? The streets of Mohenjo-Daro are a ghostly grid of perfect right angles and silent wells. This was a metropolis of perhaps 40,000 people, a marvel of the Bronze Age, and it was abandoned so completely that we do not even know what its inhabitants called themselves. We know them as the Indus Valley Civilization, a society that thrived for 1,000 years across a region larger than ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia combined. Their cities were masterpieces of civil engineering, featuring the world's first known urban sanitation systems. Houses had indoor bathrooms connected to a city-wide network of covered drains, all built with standardized kiln-fired bricks. This was not a culture that grew haphazardly. It was meticulously planned from the start. Archaeologist Jonathan Mark Kenoyer points out that the level of urban planning and standardization in the Indus cities is unparalleled in the contemporary ancient world. They used uniform weights and measures across their vast territory, suggesting a highly organized trade network that stretched all the way to Mesopotamia. They left behind thousands of intricate seal carvings, depicting everything from unicorn-like creatures to what might be early deities, each marked with a script that remains one of history's great locked doors. We can see their writing, but we cannot hear their words. The most profound mystery, however, is their social structure. There are no grand palaces, no colossal royal tombs, no monuments to a single powerful ruler. This appears to have been a society that achieved remarkable complexity without a king or an emperor, a collective effort that challenges our very definition of civilization. So what happened? Around 1900 BC, the lights began to go out. The cities were slowly, systematically emptied. Some theories point to a shifting river system that disrupted their agricultural heartland. Others suggest a changing climate that turned fertile plains into dust. There is little evidence of war or invasion, just a quiet, deliberate exodus. Their legacy did not vanish. It seeped into the subcontinent, influencing cultures and traditions for millennia to come. The silent streets of Mohenjo-Daro ask us a difficult question. Can a society be too stable, too perfectly engineered, to adapt when the world around it fundamentally changes? As one great river civilization faded into mystery, another was rising in a land of stark and dramatic isolation, a culture that would build its own wonders in the shadow of the Andes. While the Indus cities faded in silence, a very different civilization was reaching its zenith across the sea, one of vibrant color and thunderous energy. The Palace of Knossos on Crete was a labyrinth of astonishing complexity, its walls alive with frescoes of leaping dolphins and young men and women vaulting over the horns of charging bulls. This was the heart of the Minoan Civilization, Europe's first advanced society, a maritime power that dominated the Aegean for centuries. Their world was one of elegant artistry and profound mystery. Unlike the fortified citadels of their contemporaries, Minoan centers like Knossos and Phaistos were sprawling, open complexes without massive defensive walls. This suggests a society confident in its naval power and possibly more focused on commerce and ceremony than constant warfare. Historian Rodney Castleton observed that the Minoans appear to have developed a unique form of governance and religion centered around female deities, which contrasts sharply with the patriarchal societies around them. Their principal figures in art and likely in worship were powerful priestesses and goddesses, often depicted with serpents or standing atop majestic mountain peaks. Their administrative system relied on a script we call Linear A, a written language etched onto thousands of clay tablets that record inventories, trades, and rituals. Yet for all the records they left, their voice is mute to us. We can see the symbols, but the Minoan language itself remains locked away, its secrets of governance and belief forever hidden. Their architectural genius, however, speaks clearly across the millennia. Their palaces were multi-story wonders designed with light wells to channel sunshine deep into the interior courtyards, and sophisticated plumbing systems that included terracotta pipes for fresh water and drainage, rivaling the innovations of the Indus Valley a world away. Then, around 1450 BC, this brilliant world came crashing down. The colossal volcanic eruption on the nearby island of Thera, modern Santorini, is often the prime suspect. This was one of the most violent volcanic events in human history, likely triggering massive tsunamis that would have devastated the northern coast of Crete and blanketed the island in suffocating ash, crippling agriculture for generations. But was it solely nature's fury? Evidence suggests that in the aftermath, the Mycenaeans from the Greek mainland moved in, taking control of the weakened palace centers and eventually adapting the Minoan script into their own, known as Linear B. The Minoan flame was extinguished not by a single catastrophe, but by a devastating combination of natural disaster and the shifting tides of political power. Their artistic legacy, seen in the swirling octopuses on pottery and exquisite gold jewelry, shows a people deeply in tune with the rhythms of the sea and the beauty of the natural world. How could a civilization so vibrant and advanced vanish so completely from historical memory, only to be rediscovered thousands of years later as a myth, the legend of the Minotaur's labyrinth? From the sun-drenched Aegean, our search for lost worlds leads us to a desert empire whose grandeur was matched only by the swiftness of its fall. The sun-bleached deserts of Jordan hold a city of impossible beauty, Petra, a metropolis hewn not from stone but directly into the living rock. Its most famous facade, the treasury, glows with a rose-red hue at dawn, a breathtaking monument to the Nabatean civilization, masters of one of history's most challenging environments. This was not merely a city, it was the beating heart of a vast caravan network, a desert empire built on the trade of frankincense and myrrh, luxuries worth their weight in gold to the ancient world. The Nabateans were, first and foremost, geniuses of survival. In a land defined by scarce and unpredictable rainfall, they engineered an intricate web of water conservation that turned a barren landscape into a thriving capital. They constructed massive dams to divert flash floods, carved channels to guide water through the mountains, and built vast underground cisterns that could hold millions of gallons, ensuring a steady supply for their population and the countless camels of the trade caravans. Scholar Jane Taylor emphasizes that the Nabateans were not just brilliant engineers, they were astute diplomats who navigated the treacherous politics of powerful neighbors like the Romans and Parthians. Their wealth was not solely from controlling the trade routes, but from their ability to negotiate safe passage and favorable terms, creating a peaceful commercial empire in a violent age. This immense prosperity funded the carving of monumental tombs, temples, and a theater directly into the sandstone cliffs, a display of power and permanence meant to awe every visitor. Yet for all their grandeur, the Nabateans are a silent people to modern ears. They left few written records of their own, and most of what we know comes from the accounts of Greeks and Romans, who watched this desert kingdom with a mixture of envy and admiration. Their own unique script, however, would eventually evolve and influence the development of written Arabic, a lasting linguistic legacy. Their decline was not swift but a slow fading. The Roman annexation of their kingdom in the 2nd century redirected the flow of wealth and power, and the gradual shift of trade from overland caravan routes to maritime paths undercut their economic foundation. The lifeblood of their civilization was slowly diverted, and the great city of Petra was gradually abandoned to the sands. What profound knowledge about managing scarce resources and thriving in extreme climates is still locked away in the thousands of unexcavated tombs and structures surrounding that rose-red city. As we leave the deserts, another mystery calls from the dense, consuming jungles of Southeast Asia. A metropolis of stone and water once sprawled across the Cambodian jungle, its heart the breathtaking temple of Angkor Wat. This was the center of the Khmer Empire, a civilization that mastered its environment on a scale almost unimaginable. They did not just build temples, they engineered a hydraulic landscape of vast reservoirs, called barrays, and hundreds of miles of canals that transformed the forest into a fertile plain capable of supporting a population of perhaps 1 million people. This intricate water network was the empire's lifeblood, allowing for multiple rice harvests each year and fueling the growth of a society that dominated Southeast Asia for 6 centuries. The city of Angkor was not a collection of isolated temples, but a vast, low-density urban complex whose true size was only recently understood. Archaeologist Damian Evans revealed through LiDAR technology that Angkor was the world's largest pre-industrial urban complex, a discovery that completely rewrites our understanding of medieval city sizes. The Khmer worldview was shaped by a fusion of spiritual and political power. Kings ruled as Devarajas or god kings, their authority divinely sanctioned and immortalized in stone. Angkor Wat itself, originally dedicated to the Hindu god Vishnu, is a microcosm of the Hindu universe, its towering peaks representing the mythical Mount Meru. This religious identity later shifted towards Buddhism, yet the scale of architectural ambition never waned. The bas-reliefs covering their temples are not mere decoration. They are epic narratives carved in sandstone, depicting celestial dances, detailed scenes from mythology, and vivid tableaus of daily life, from bustling markets to soldiers marching to war. They offer a priceless window into a world of immense sophistication and order. So what could possibly topple such a powerful, well-organized society? The decline was a slow unraveling, not a single catastrophic event. A series of prolonged and severe droughts in the 14th and 15th centuries would have placed unbearable strain on that brilliant water management system. Canals silted up, reservoirs ran low, and the agricultural surplus that fed the massive population began to fail. This environmental stress was compounded by external pressures from rising neighboring states like the Ayutthaya Kingdom, and possibly by internal social unrest as the god king's power waned in the face of crisis. The infrastructure that had been their greatest strength may have become a vulnerability, too complex to maintain as resources dwindled. The jungle, held at bay for centuries, began its relentless reconquest, swallowing the grand causeways and reservoirs until only the stone skeletons of temples remained. How does a society so brilliantly adapted to its environment become a victim of that very adaptation when the climate itself begins to shift? This question of adaptation and collapse echoes far from the Southeast Asian jungle, high in the remote mountains of South America. High in the arid valleys of coastal Peru, the pyramids of Caral rise from the dust, silent and immense. These structures are not just old, they are contemporaries of the Great Pyramids of Egypt, built over 5,000 years ago by a society that flourished in complete isolation. This is the Caral Soup civilization, one of the very first to emerge in the Americas, a culture that built a complex society without any blueprint from the Old World. Its discovery forces us to reconsider where and how civilization itself begins. The people of Caral demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of their world. They constructed massive platform mounds and grand sunken circular plazas, spaces designed for public gatherings that must have echoed with music and ceremony. Archaeologist Ruth Shady's work reveals a society that emerged independently, a pristine civilization whose focus was not on war, but on trade, music, and the movements of the stars. Their economy was a model of synergy, weaving together the resources of the valley and the sea. Farmers grew cotton and gourds, while their counterparts on the coast harvested vast amounts of anchovies and shellfish. This was not a subsistence economy, it was a network of specialized labor. The cotton was traded to the fishermen for nets, the fish was traded to the farmers for food, and this web of exchange supported a society capable of mobilizing labor for projects that would last millennia. They even developed an early form of record-keeping, using knotted cords that foreshadowed the later Inca quipu, suggesting a need to manage information and accounts on a large scale. The artifacts they left behind speak of a rich inner world. Flutes and cornets crafted from the bones of condors and pelicans have been found. Their haunting notes a glimpse into a culture that valued artistic expression. There is a profound absence here, a complete lack of fortifications or any clear evidence of warfare. Caral presents a compelling picture, a society that achieved monumentality and social complexity for centuries without the driving force of organized conflict. So why did this peaceful and prosperous civilization eventually fade away? The answer seems to lie not in invasion, but in the environment. Around 1800 BC, the climate of the region began to shift. Some studies point to prolonged droughts, while others suggest seismic activity may have disrupted their intricate water channels. The very agricultural base that supported their growth became unreliable. It appears the people of Caral did not perish in a cataclysm, but made a slow, deliberate exodus, abandoning their grand plazas and pyramids to the encroaching desert over generations. What does the story of Caral tell us about the foundations of society? It suggests that civilization can be born from cooperation and a shared cultural project, not just from conquest. How many other cradles of human achievement lie completely forgotten, their stories still buried beneath the sand? The legacy of these early Americans did not simply vanish. It flowed into the cultures that followed, much like another enigmatic society that would later rise in the very same land. The legacy of Caral's cooperation echoes down the centuries, yet the next great civilization to rise in Peru tells a far darker, more dramatic story. Along the northern coast, the Moche people built a world of gods and gold, a society whose artistic brilliance was matched only by its brutal intimacy with the forces of nature. Their ceremonial centers, like the sprawling complex of Huaca del Sol and Huaca de la Luna, were pyramids of sun-dried brick towering over the desert, their walls adorned with vivid murals of a fanged deity known as Aya Peak. This was not a culture of quiet farmers, but a theocracy ruled by powerful priest-kings who wielded both spiritual and political authority. These rulers orchestrated elaborate public ceremonies, events that archaeologists believe involved ritual combat and human sacrifice, all depicted with startling clarity on their pottery and temple friezes. The purpose was likely to appease the gods, to ensure the continuation of the world and the flow of life-giving water. The Moche were technological masters of their harsh environment. They engineered extensive canal networks that siphoned water from rivers flowing down from the Andes, turning barren valleys into lush, productive farmland capable of supporting a complex society. Their craftsmanship was unparalleled in the ancient Americas. They were virtuosos of metallurgy, working gold, silver, and copper to create intricate ceremonial ornaments, and their pottery stands as a unique historical record. Researcher Christopher Donnan emphasizes that the Moche artistic tradition is one of the most naturalistic and detailed in the ancient Americas, capturing individual faces with astonishing accuracy. They produced what are known as portrait vessels, ceramic jars molded into the likenesses of specific individuals, complete with unique hairstyles, scars, and expressions. These are not generic faces, they are portraits, giving us the haunting sense that we are looking directly at a person who lived over 1,500 years ago. How could a society capable of such profound artistic observation and sophisticated engineering fail? The evidence points to a catastrophic clash with a changing climate. Sediment cores from the region reveal a devastating pattern, a series of severe El Niño events around the 8th century. These were not the gentle weather oscillations we hear about today, but biblical-scale calamities. Warm Pacific waters would have triggered torrential rains, causing rivers to burst their banks and flood the meticulously maintained canal systems. This would have been followed by prolonged, crippling droughts that starved the fields. The very irrigation networks that were the foundation of their power became channels of destruction, silting up and failing. The priest-kings, whose authority was based on their ability to intercede with the gods for water and fertility, would have seen their power crumble as the environment turned against them. Society appears to have fragmented, with communities abandoning the great ceremonial centers and dispersing into the highlands. The Moche did not vanish without a trace. Their advanced metalworking techniques and hydraulic knowledge were inherited and refined by later cultures like the Chimu and eventually the Inca. Their story is a powerful lesson in fragility, a reminder that even the most brilliant human creations are vulnerable to the whims of the planet. How does a culture's greatest strength become its ultimate weakness when nature decides to rewrite the rules? This question of resilience in the face of environmental chaos finds a profound echo not in the mountains, but deep within the steamy, uncharted jungles of another continent. On the high plains of the Andes, at a breathtaking altitude where the air is thin, stand the ruins of Tiwanaku. Here, the monumental gateway of the sun rises from the dust, a single block of stone intricately carved with a central deity flanked by rows of winged attendants. This figure, a staff-bearing god, was the spiritual heart of an empire that mastered one of the planet's most challenging environments. The Tiwanaku Civilization transformed the harsh altiplano surrounding Lake Titicaca into a flourishing heartland, supporting a population that may have reached as many as 100,000 people at its peak. Their genius was not expressed in conquest alone, but in a profound understanding of their land. They developed an agricultural system of raised fields, known as sucacolos, which were vast, elevated platforms surrounded by water-filled canals. This was a stroke of engineering brilliance. The water absorbed heat from the intense sun during the day, releasing it slowly throughout the cold nights to create a protective thermal blanket around the crops, preventing frost. These fields also recycled nutrients naturally, producing harvests so abundant they could fuel an empire. As archaeologist Alan Carlotta notes, Tiwanaku's engineering and agricultural prowess allowed it to become a dominant power in the Andes, with influence stretching into modern Peru, Chile, and Bolivia. Their capital was a marvel of stonework, with precisely cut blocks fitted together so perfectly that not even a knife blade could slip between them, all achieved without any mortar. This was a city of celestial alignment and grand processions, its monuments positioned to capture the solstice sun. Their religious iconography, centered on the staff god, spread across the region, a visual language of power and belief carried along extensive trade routes that moved everything from hallucinogenic snuffs to vibrant textiles. Then, around 1000 C, this high-altitude powerhouse began to falter. A prolonged and severe drought lasting for generations struck the region. The life-giving waters of Lake Titicaca receded, and the intricate system of raised fields, so dependent on a careful water balance, dried out. The agricultural surplus that fed the urban population and supported the state's authority vanished. This environmental catastrophe likely triggered internal social unrest, as the ruling class lost its divine mandate to ensure fertility and water. The grand capital was gradually abandoned, its people dispersing into smaller, isolated communities. Yet, Tiwanaku's legacy was woven into the fabric of the Andes. Their advanced knowledge of stonework, their agricultural techniques, and their religious symbols were inherited and refined by the Inca centuries later. What does the fall of Tiwanaku teach us? It shows that even the most ingenious adaptations to a specific environment can become a fatal vulnerability when that environment changes beyond a certain point. Their story is a powerful lesson in sustainable resilience, a question that echoes from the high Andes to the most remote island landscape on Earth. On a tiny, isolated speck of land in the vast Pacific, another civilization faced an even more extreme test of its resources and its will to survive. A world away from the Andean highlands, on the most isolated inhabited island on Earth, the colossal stone faces of Rapa Nui stand guard. These Moai are not mere statues, they are the solemn, towering representatives of an entire society that flourished in complete solitude for centuries. Each of these multi-ton giants was meticulously carved from volcanic rock to honor powerful ancestors, believed to be vessels for supernatural power that watched over the living. The Rapa Nui people channeled their collective energy into this incredible sculptural tradition, a cultural project that defined their world. Their society was organized into competing clans, and the scale and number of these statues became a form of social competition, a way to display prestige and divine favor. The engineering feat of moving these giants across the island, sometimes for miles without wheels or large animals, remains a subject of awe and debate. They likely used a combination of log rollers, ropes, and sheer human ingenuity, walking the statues upright in a rocking motion, a breathtaking display of communal effort. For generations, the dominant story of their collapse was a stark warning of self-inflicted ecocide. The narrative told of a people who cut down every last palm tree to move their statues, leading to catastrophic soil erosion, the loss of raw materials, and a descent into warfare and cannibalism. But this simple story is now being fundamentally rewritten. Anthropologist Terry Hunt points to new evidence that challenges this grim tale. He suggests that the real death knell for the Rapa Nui was not internal failure alone, but the arrival of Europeans. With these outsiders came slavery, violence, and most devastatingly, diseases for which the isolated islanders had no immunity. The population was decimated in a short, brutal period. This is not to say the island faced no ecological pressures. The introduction of Polynesian rats, which ate the seeds of the native palm trees, certainly contributed to deforestation. The combination of a growing population and a shrinking resource base likely created tension. Yet the society was adapting, shifting its practices, until that fatal contact with the outside world shattered its resilience. The deepest secrets of the Rapa Nui are locked away in their unique script known as Rongorongo. Incised onto wooden tablets, it is one of the very few independent writing systems ever invented, but it remains completely undeciphered. Within those cryptic glyphs could lie their entire history, their creation myths, and their understanding of the cosmos, a voice forever silenced by the very interconnectedness we often celebrate. How does a society so brilliantly adapted to its isolated world cope when that isolation is violently broken? The story of Rapa Nui is a poignant lesson in fragility, not just of an ecosystem, but of a unique human culture. From this solitary island in the vast Pacific, we now turn to a civilization that was the very opposite of isolated, a vibrant crossroads at the center of the ancient world's trade routes. Deep beneath the rolling hills of central Italy lie tombs painted with scenes of vibrant life. The Etruscan necropolises of Tarquinia and Cerveteri are not monuments of sorrow, but colorful celebrations, their walls alive with frescoes of banqueting couples, dancers, and athletes. This was the world of the Etruscans, a sophisticated and powerful civilization that thrived for centuries before Rome was even a village, a culture whose very soul was later absorbed by its most famous pupil. They built 12 powerful city-states, a loose federation united by language and religion, dominating the peninsula with their mastery of trade and metallurgy. Their wealth flowed from rich deposits of iron and copper, which they crafted into exquisite jewelry, bronze statues, and tools that were traded across the Mediterranean. Their cities were laid out on a grid plan, a sophisticated approach to urban design that the Romans would later adopt and perfect. Their religious world was dense and complex, centered on interpreting the will of the gods through the flight of birds, the examination of animal livers, and the patterns of lightning. As historian Sybil Haynes observed, the Etruscans were crucial in transmitting Greek cultural elements to the Romans, from the alphabet to architectural styles. They were the cultural bridge, filtering the art and ideas of Greece to the fledgling society on the Tiber. Yet for all their influence, their own voice remains frustratingly muted. We can see their writing, a script derived from Greek, on thousands of tombs and artifacts, but the Etruscan language itself is only partially understood. It is a linguistic island, unrelated to its Indo-European neighbors, and without a Rosetta Stone, its deeper meanings about governance, literature, and daily life remain just out of reach. Their tangible legacy, however, is everywhere. They gave Rome the architectural arch, a structural revolution that would enable aqueducts and colossal buildings. The brutal spectacle of gladiatorial games originated in Etruscan funeral rites, ceremonies meant to honor the dead with ritual combat. Their elaborate funeral customs reveal a profound belief in an active afterlife, a world where the deceased continued their banquets and social rituals for eternity, surrounded by their finest possessions. So how did such a foundational culture vanish from the historical stage? The decline was a story of relentless Roman expansion, combined with the Etruscans' own internal political fragmentation. Their league of city-states, while culturally united, often failed to present a unified front against the rising, disciplined power of Rome. One by one, the Etruscan cities were defeated, absorbed, or entered into alliances that slowly eroded their distinct identity. Their people were granted Roman citizenship, their aristocracy married into Roman families, and over generations, their language and customs faded, surviving primarily as influences within Roman culture itself. What profound secrets about pre-Roman Italy, about the origins of Western art and ritual, are still locked within those untranslated Etruscan texts? The story of Etruscan influence on Rome demonstrates how one civilization can be built upon the bones of another, a theme that echoes powerfully in the rise of a very different empire, one born in the steppes of Central Asia. The sheer scale of the stone walls at Mycenae is overwhelming, blocks so immense that later Greeks believed only the mythical Cyclopes could have lifted them. This was the fortress heart of the Mycenaean Civilization, a society of warriors and kings that dominated the Greek world long before the rise of Athens and Sparta. Their palaces were not centers of art like the Minoans, but heavily fortified administrative hubs, controlling the production and distribution of oil, wine, textiles, and weapons across the region. The king, or wanax, ruled from a throne room at the center of this complex bureaucracy. Thousands of clay tablets inscribed with the Linear B script detail a highly organized economy, recording every jar of olive oil, every chariot wheel, and every measure of bronze in meticulous inventories. Archaeologist Oliver Dickinson points to this as evidence of a highly centralized palatial economy, a system where the state controlled nearly every aspect of production and trade. This was a society built for power and stability, its influence stretching from Sicily to the coast of Anatolia, where their legends say they fought the epic Trojan War. Yet for all their military might and administrative control, their collapse was swift and total. Around 1200 BC, the great palaces of Mycenae, Pylos, and Turins were violently destroyed and abandoned. The intricate bureaucracy vanished, writing disappeared from Greece for centuries, and the region plunged into a dark age of isolation and poverty. What could shatter such a powerful system? The evidence points to a perfect storm of disasters. A series of severe, prolonged droughts would have crippled the agricultural base that supported the palace economies, leading to famine and social unrest. Earthquakes may have physically toppled their mighty walls. At the same time, mysterious groups of maritime raiders, known to Egyptian records as the Sea Peoples, were attacking coastlines across the eastern Mediterranean, disrupting the vital trade networks that were the lifeblood of the Mycenaean states. It is likely that internal rebellion from an overtaxed and starving population finished the job, burning the palaces and overthrowing the wanax. The centralized system that was their greatest strength became their ultimate weakness, when one critical failure could bring the entire structure crashing down. Their epic tales of the Trojan War and the wanderings of Odysseus, preserved by Homer, are the ghostly echoes of this lost world, a blend of history and myth that would inspire classical Greece. How does a civilization so thoroughly documented simply vanish from the historical record, leaving only legends and rubble behind? This wave of collapse was not unique to Greece, but part of a domino effect that brought down the entire Bronze Age world, including a mighty empire of merchants and sailors to the east. The archives of Hattusa held the empire's breath. Tucked away in the Anatolian highlands, this fortified capital housed thousands of baked clay tablets, a comprehensive record of a formidable power, the Hittite Empire. These were not mere lists, but a detailed library of laws, international treaties, and epic myths that reveal a society of surprising sophistication. The Hittites were technological visionaries, among the very first to master the large-scale production of iron, a skill that gave their military a formidable edge. More remarkably, their system of governance established one of history's earliest forms of a constitutional monarchy. The king, while powerful, ruled with the Panku, a council of nobles who advised on matters of state and even held the authority to adjudicate royal succession, a check on absolute power that was virtually unheard of in the ancient world. Scholar Trevor Bryce highlights their diplomatic genius, noting how the Hittites expertly used marriage alliances and binding treaties to secure their vast territory. Their most famous achievement in statecraft was the treaty signed with Egypt after the standoff at the Battle of Kadesh, a landmark peace agreement that established generations of stability between two superpowers. This pragmatic, diplomatic spirit was mirrored in their legal code, which often emphasized restitution and compensation for wrongs over brutal retaliation, focusing on restoring balance rather than exacting vengeance. Their religious world was a tapestry, thoughtfully weaving together indigenous Anatolian deities with gods from the Hurrian and Mesopotamian pantheons, a spiritual syncretism that helped bind their diverse empire together. So what could possibly shatter such a stable and well-organized state? Around 1200 BC, the Hittite Empire imploded with stunning speed. The causes were a cascade of interconnected crises. Internal dynastic strife and rivalries fractured the central authority. Just as external threats reached a climax, the mysterious sea peoples, marauding groups disrupting the entire Mediterranean, attacked the vulnerable coastlines, severing vital trade routes. At the same time, evidence points to severe, prolonged droughts that triggered widespread famine, crippling the agricultural heartland and decimating the population. The capital of Hattusa was burned and abandoned, its vast archives left to be buried for over 3,000 years. Their legacy, however, did not die. The knowledge of ironworking spread from the fragments of their empire, revolutionizing toolmaking and warfare across the ancient world, while their legal and diplomatic concepts seeped into the cultures that followed. What can the Hittite model of balanced governance and international diplomacy teach us about holding a diverse empire together, and what wisdom was lost in the fire that consumed their capital? From the Anatolian highlands, our search leads to the coast, to a people whose wealth was not measured in land, but in the color of a precious dye. Their ships were the finest on the sea, vessels of cedar and oak built to carry not just cargo, but the very alphabet that would one day circle the globe. From the bustling island city of Tyre and the vibrant port of Sidon, the Phoenicians launched a commercial empire that wove the Mediterranean world together. They were the undisputed masters of maritime trade, their networks stretching from the Atlantic coast of Spain to the shores of Lebanon. Their wealth was built on luxury, on a unique purple dye extracted from the murex snail, a color so rare and vibrant it became the mark of royalty. They were pioneers of glassblowing and supplied the ancient world with the prized cedar timber from their forests. But their most enduring export was not a product, but a revolutionary idea, a simplified alphabetic script of just 22 characters. Unlike the complex cuneiform and hieroglyphic systems of their neighbors, the Phoenician alphabet represented consonant sounds, a system so efficient and adaptable that it was eagerly adopted by the Greeks, who added vowels and then passed on to the Etruscans and Romans. This script became the direct ancestor of the very letters you are reading now. Historian Maria Eugenia Orbit reminds us that the Phoenicians were not just traders. They were cultural intermediaries who facilitated the exchange of ideas and technologies between East and West. They operated as a network of powerful, independent city-states, each with its own king and council of elders, competing and cooperating in a web of commerce. Their greatest colony, Carthage, founded on the North African coast, would grow to become a dominant power in its own right, a testament to the Phoenician talent for establishing lasting footholds in new lands. Their political independence was slowly eroded by the rising land empires of the Assyrians, Babylonians, and Persians, who coveted their wealthy cities. Yet their cultural and economic impact was already indelible, carried on by their colonies and their world-changing script. How could a civilization so dedicated to profit and navigation leave behind a gift that would ultimately outlast every empire that conquered them? The answer lies in the incredible legacy of their most ambitious and powerful colony, a city that would rise from a strip of North African coast to challenge the might of Rome itself. The circular war harbor of Carthage was an engineering marvel, a fortified ring of water designed to shelter the warships of a mercantile empire that dared to challenge Rome for mastery of the Mediterranean. From its humble beginnings as a Phoenician trading post, this North African city-state grew into a formidable independent power, its wealth flowing from three great pillars: control of sea lanes, fertile North African plains, and rich silver mines in Spain. This was not merely a copy of its Phoenician forebears, but a distinct society forged from a blend of ancient Levantine traditions and the local Berber cultures of North Africa. As archaeologist Richard Miles observes, this unique cultural synthesis was the very foundation of its commercial empire, creating a resilient and adaptable identity. Their government was led by two annually elected Sufites, powerful judges who worked alongside a council of elders and a senate of the wealthy, a complex system of checks and balances that managed the state's affairs for centuries. Yet this sophisticated civilization also practiced a faith that modern minds find deeply troubling: the ritual sacrifice of children at sanctuaries known as tophets. While the true scale of this practice is hotly debated by scholars, the archaeological evidence is stark: rows of funerary urns containing the cremated remains of infants and young animals, offered to the gods Baal Hammon and Tanit in exchange for divine favor. This dark aspect of their belief system would later be used by their Roman enemies to justify total destruction. The three Punic Wars between Carthage and Rome were an existential struggle that stretched over a century. The brilliance of the Carthaginian general Hannibal nearly broke Rome, his legendary crossing of the Alps with war elephants remaining one of the most audacious military maneuvers in history. For 16 years he roamed Italy, undefeated in battle, a ghost that haunted the Roman psyche. But Roman resilience and resources ultimately prevailed. The final siege of Carthage was brutal and absolute. When the city fell in 146 BCE, it was systematically razed, its fields sown with salt, and its people killed or enslaved. Roman censors performed a ritual of execration, cursing the ground so the city might never rise again. In a final, bitter irony, the only Carthaginian texts to survive were their agricultural manuals, which the victorious Romans carefully preserved and translated. The knowledge of these vanquished farmers, detailing how to cultivate the olive and the grape, then spread across the Roman Empire, profoundly influencing its own farming practices for generations. The fall of Carthage forces a haunting question of alternate history. What if Hannibal had taken the gates of Rome? What would a Mediterranean world shaped by Carthaginian merchants rather than Roman legionaries have looked like? Their story is a stark lesson on how history is written by the victors, and how a vibrant culture can be so completely erased from the earth, leaving only the whispers of its enemies and the silent stones of its tophets. But as one empire was methodically scrubbed from the map, another was rising from the misty highlands of a continent halfway across the world, a culture whose own golden artifacts would one day tell a story of a very different kind of power. The humid air of the Mexican Gulf Coast hangs heavy around colossal stone faces, each one a portrait of a powerful ruler carved from a single block of volcanic basalt. These are the Olmec, the mother culture of Mesoamerica, whose influence would ripple through the region for more than 1,000 years after their own civilization faded into the jungle. They were the first in this part of the world to build a complex society, creating a cultural blueprint that every subsequent civilization, from the Maya to the Aztec, would follow. Their greatest monuments are a testament to staggering ambition and engineering skill. Anthropologist Anne Cyphers emphasizes the incredible feat of moving these multi-ton heads, some weighing over 20 tons, from quarries dozens of miles away through swamps and rugged terrain without the use of the wheel or domestic animals. This required not just raw manpower, but a sophisticated understanding of geology, logistics, and social organization to mobilize and coordinate such a vast labor force. Their society was clearly structured, with a powerful elite class of rulers and priests who lived in ceremonial centers, adorned with massive earthen mounds and vast plazas designed for public rituals. At sites like San Lorenzo and La Venta, these rulers commissioned not only the giant heads but also intricate carvings in jade and serpentine, trading across vast distances to acquire these precious materials. They carved enigmatic altars and stelae depicting rulers emerging from supernatural portals, often holding ropes that bound captive figures, hinting at a world where political power was deeply intertwined with the sacred and perhaps maintained through ritualized force. Their spiritual beliefs centered on a pantheon of deities, including a prominent were jaguar, a being combining human and jaguar features, which would become a recurring motif in later Mesoamerican mythology. They even developed a core ritual that would define the region for centuries, the sacred ball game, played in specially constructed courts where the sport was not just a game but a cosmic drama reenacting the struggle between life and death. So why did this foundational civilization, one that seemed to have mastered its environment and established enduring cultural traditions, eventually decline? The reasons remain shrouded, but evidence points to a slow unraveling. At San Lorenzo, many of the colossal heads were deliberately defaced and buried, suggesting internal rebellion or civil strife. Other theories point to environmental pressures, such as shifts in river courses that disrupted their agricultural base and trade networks. By around 400 BC, their great centers were largely abandoned, their people dispersing and likely integrating into newer, rising cultures. How did the Olmecs, without a single written record we can read, manage to imprint their artistic style, their gods, and their rituals so deeply onto the fabric of an entire continent? Their legacy was not a written history, but a visual and spiritual language passed down through the ages, a silent foundation upon which towering pyramids would later be built. Monte Albán's flattened mountaintop stands as a testament to ambition, a city engineered from the very peak it crowned. For over 1,000 years, this was the nerve center of the Zapotec civilization, a political and religious capital that gazed down upon the valleys of Oaxaca. Its main plaza, a vast ceremonial space flanked by pyramidal platforms and a ball court, was the stage for a society of remarkable sophistication. Here, the Zapotecs perfected one of the earliest known writing systems in the Americas, a complex script of glyphs carved into stone monuments known as danzantes. These were not random symbols, they were records of conquests, genealogies of rulers, and celestial events, a written history meant to endure. Archaeologist Joyce Marcus notes that the Zapotec state excelled at integrating diverse ethnic groups under a single political system, using writing and ritual to maintain cohesion across a varied landscape. Their calendar system, tracking the cycles of time with precision, was another tool of statecraft, aligning the rhythms of power with the movements of the heavens. This was a clearly stratified society, where powerful priests and nobles lived in stone palaces atop the Acropolis, overseeing an economy fueled by extensive terrace farming, masterful craft production, and a bustling trade in prized goods like obsidian and intricate greyware pottery. The city's very location, a mountaintop reshaped by human hands, was a declaration of dominance over both land and people. So how does a capital that endured for a millennium finally fall silent? The decline of Monte Albán around 800 CE was a slow unraveling. Internal strife and competition between noble factions likely weakened the central authority from within. Centuries of supporting a large urban population may have led to the depletion of nearby resources like timber and fertile soil. At the same time, new competing powers were rising in the surrounding valleys, drawing away trade and influence. Yet the Zapotec people and their culture did not vanish. They retreated from their grand capital, but their language, traditions, and knowledge endured in smaller valley settlements. Their innovations in urban planning, their astronomical observations, and their artistic styles were inherited and adapted by later cultures like the Mixtec, and even echoed in the Aztec Empire. The longevity of Monte Albán forces us to ask a profound question about pre-Columbian state formation. What is the true secret to a civilization's endurance? Is it monumental architecture, or is it the flexible cultural identity that can outlast the collapse of a single, glorious capital? From the engineered heights of Mesoamerica, our search for lost worlds leads to a very different landscape, where societies were not carved from mountain peaks, but woven from the harsh fabric of the desert. High on the sheer cliff walls of Mesa Verde, entire villages seemed to grow from the stone itself. These were not temporary shelters, but permanent, multi-story apartment complexes ingeniously built into vast natural alcoves, the work of the ancestral Puebloans, a people who mastered the art of survival in the arid American Southwest. Their world was one of profound community and deep spiritual connection to a challenging land. On the mesas above, they practiced a form of agriculture that seems almost miraculous, known as dry farming. They carefully selected seeds that could thrive with minimal water, built grids of rock and earth to capture precious dew and slow soil erosion, and planted in areas where runoff from rare rains would naturally collect. This intimate knowledge of the desert allowed them to grow corn, beans, and squash, the three sisters, for centuries. Their social and ceremonial life revolved around the kiva, a circular, partly subterranean room entered through a hole in the roof. These were not just rooms, they were sacred spaces believed to be portals to the underworld, where clans gathered for rituals, political meetings, and to weave the social fabric of their society tight. But the true scale of their influence is revealed at a different site, Choco Canyon. Archaeologist Stephen Lexon points to the Choco network as evidence of something far grander than isolated villages. Here, they constructed monumental great houses, massive stone structures with hundreds of rooms that required a staggering investment of labor. They built an extensive system of perfectly straight roads, some 30 feet wide, that radiated out from the canyon for dozens of miles, connecting this ceremonial center to outlying communities across an immense region. The architecture of Choco is a stone calendar, its walls and windows aligned to mark the solstices and the complex 19-year cycle of the moon. This was a landscape engineered for ceremony, a central place that drew people from across the region for trade, worship, and a shared cultural identity. So why did they ultimately walk away from these magnificent cliff dwellings and great houses around 1300 CE? The answer lies in a convergence of pressures. A great drought lasting for decades gripped the region, pushing their sophisticated dry farming techniques beyond their limits. Centuries of harvesting timber for construction and firewood had depleted the slow-growing pinyon and juniper forests, leading to increased erosion. This environmental strain likely exacerbated social tensions as resources grew scarcer and the authority of the religious leaders who had organized society may have been questioned. Their solution was not to vanish but to migrate. In a deliberate, organized exodus, they moved south and east, joining with other communities along the Rio Grande and other river valleys. Their legacy was not abandoned, it was carried with them. Their descendants are the modern Pueblo peoples who continue their traditions of pottery, farming, and ceremonial life to this day. How did these ancient communities maintain such powerful cultural continuity through immense environmental hardship? The answer is etched into the rock art they left behind. petroglyphs of spirals that may map celestial events and handprints that forever mark their presence, a testament to a resilience built on community and a deep, adaptive wisdom. This story of endurance in the face of a changing climate stands in stark contrast to the fate of a very different society, one that built its own monumental earthworks in the fertile heart of the Mississippi Valley. Monk's Mound at Cahokia rises 10 stories above the Illinois floodplain, a colossal earthen pyramid that demanded the movement of over 14 million baskets of soil. This was the heart of a sprawling city that, at its peak around the year 1050, rivaled any contemporary settlement in North America for its size and complexity. Cahokia was not a simple village, but a planned metropolis with over 120 mounds arranged around grand plazas, its skyline dominated by great thatched-roofed buildings and a wooden stockade that stretched for over 2 miles. The central plaza alone covered nearly 50 acres, a space designed for massive public gatherings that would have united thousands. As archaeologist Timothy Porcatat suggests, this represents a sudden fluorescence of social complexity, a place where goods and ideas converged from across the continent. The city's influence is seen in artifacts of copper from the Great Lakes, shells from the Gulf Coast, and mica from the Appalachian Mountains, all flowing into this vibrant hub. The society was almost certainly hierarchical, led by powerful chieftains who could command the labor to reshape the very landscape. Their authority was likely rooted in a deep connection to the cosmos, for the entire city was a celestial observatory. Key mounds are aligned to mark the solstices and the maximum risings of the moon, events that would have dictated the timing of planting, harvest, and sacred ceremonies. This spiritual power, however, had a darker side. Mound 72 reveals a grim testament to this authority, a burial pit containing the remains of over 50 young women and several men, all apparently sacrificed to accompany a high-status leader into the afterlife. This practice underscores the tremendous power wielded by Cahokia's rulers, a power that could command both life and death. So what could destabilize such a powerful and spiritually potent center? The city's decline was a slow-motion collapse beginning around the 13th century. Centuries of intensive construction had stripped the surrounding uplands of trees, leading to widespread deforestation and catastrophic soil erosion. This environmental degradation was compounded by a series of major floods from the Mississippi River, which would have devastated the agricultural lowlands that fed the city. The very concentration of people that made Cahokia great also made it vulnerable to disease and social strife. As resources became scarcer, the authority of the ruling class likely crumbled. The social contract that justified their power in exchange for cosmic order and material prosperity was broken. People began to vote with their feet, dispersing into smaller, more sustainable communities across the Mississippi Valley. Yet Cahokia's legacy did not die. Its influence radiated outward, shaping the Mississippian culture seen in later societies like the Natchez, who maintained similar hierarchical structures and mound-building traditions. The story of this American metropolis forces us to abandon old notions of a sparsely populated, primitive continent. How does the rise and fall of this great city, built not of stone but of earth, challenge our understanding of what urban life in ancient North America could be? From the grand earthen pyramids of the Mississippi, we journey to the dense rainforests of the Amazon, where another civilization was quietly engineering its own paradise. The geometric earthworks of the Hopewell culture are etched into the land like a vast, silent language, scattered across the eastern woodlands, from the Mississippi Valley to the Appalachian foothills. These enormous circles, octagons, and squares were not fortifications or city walls. They were ceremonial landscapes, gathering places for a continent-spanning cultural phenomenon that redefined complexity without an emperor or a capital city. The Hopewell were not a single tribe or a unified empire, but a shared set of beliefs and practices that connected distinct communities across thousands of miles for centuries. Their true power lay in an immense exchange network, an interaction sphere that moved more than just goods. Obsidian from the distant Yellowstone region in Wyoming, shimmering copper from the shores of Lake Superior, shells from the warm Gulf Coast, and mica from the Appalachian Mountains all flowed along these routes. Anthropologist Bradley Lepper describes this as a system that facilitated the movement of materials, indicating extensive social connections that wove the continent together. This was not mere commerce, it was a sacred economy. These exotic materials were transformed by master artisans into objects of profound spiritual power, intricate ear spools, effigy pipes carved in the shapes of powerful animals, and delicate cutouts from sheets of mica. These items were likely not owned by individuals in the way we think of wealth, but served as ritual paraphernalia, used in ceremonies that united people from different villages and language groups. The earthworks themselves were celestial calendars, their walls and gateways precisely aligned to the complex 18.6-year cycle of the moon, marking the timing of these great gatherings. At these centers, people would have feasted, honored their dead in elaborate burial mounds, exchanged knowledge, and reaffirmed a shared identity that transcended their local affiliations. How did such a widespread and sophisticated cultural system operate for nearly 700 years without a central authority? The answer lies in its very decentralization. Power was likely held by spiritual leaders or clan elders who could orchestrate these events, but there is no evidence of a ruling class living in palaces or commanding armies. This was a collaborative complexity, a web of mutual obligation and shared ritual that bound society together. Its decline around 500 CE appears to have been a quiet unraveling. A shift to a slightly cooler, drier climate may have disrupted the agricultural patterns that supported the large gatherings. At the same time, social organization seems to have shifted inward, with communities focusing more on local concerns and their own subsistence, causing the Great Exchange Network to gradually fade. The Hopewell legacy, however, did not disappear. Their artistic styles and mound-building traditions were carried forward by later cultures, their influence subtly embedded in the heritage of many Native American nations. Their story challenges our most basic assumptions, proving that a civilization can be vast, interconnected, and spiritually rich without ever building a city or crowning a king. What forms of social genius allowed them to achieve this, and what lessons does their collaborative model hold for our own interconnected world? This question of decentralized power finds a stunning parallel in a civilization that flourished in a landscape of impossible extremes, the Nok culture of West Africa. The royal pyramids of Mara stand as proud, steep-sided sentinels in the Sudanese desert, a powerful declaration of a kingdom that did not just imitate its northern neighbor, but once conquered it. This was the kingdom of Kush, a Nubian power that rose to such prominence it established Egypt's 25th dynasty, the famed Black Pharaohs who ruled from the Nile Delta. Their story is one of strategic genius, built on a foundation of immense natural wealth. The Kushites controlled some of the richest gold mines in the ancient world, a resource that funded their state and made them indispensable partners and rivals to the Egyptians. Later, they became pioneers of iron production in sub-Saharan Africa, their furnaces at Meroe lighting the night sky and arming their warriors with superior weapons. As Egyptologist Laszlo Turek explains, Kushite culture was a unique blend of Egyptian influences and deep indigenous traditions, a fusion visible in their language, religion, and artistic styles. They worshipped Egyptian gods like Ammon, but depicted their rulers with distinctively Nubian features, broad-shouldered and muscular, adorned with ram's head amulets symbolic of their own interpretation of divinity. Their society was governed by powerful monarchs, and notably, they had a line of formidable female rulers known as Kandakes, queen mothers who could wield authority equal to any king and even lead armies in battle. To administer their state, they developed their own unique script, Meroitic, a writing system that covered countless royal inscriptions and funerary texts. Yet this voice is still muffled, as the Meroitic language remains only partially deciphered, a locked door to their inner thoughts and history. The kingdom's decline was a slow pivot of global trade. The rise of the Axumite Empire in Ethiopia redirected lucrative trade routes away from the Nile Valley, starving Kush of the commercial income it depended upon. This economic pressure was compounded by environmental changes, as overgrazing and a slowly desertifying landscape likely strained their agricultural base. Yet their ingenuity left a profound mark. They perfected the water wheel, or sakia, an irrigation device that could lift water from the Nile with far greater efficiency, a technology that would revolutionize farming across the region for centuries to come. What profound secrets about African statecraft, technology, and the role of women in power are still hidden within the untranslated Meroitic texts? The legacy of Kush, with its blend of indigenous strength and borrowed grandeur, finds a powerful parallel in another African civilization that rose to even greater heights of international renown. The tallest obelisks of Axum were not just monuments, they were needles of stone threading the earth to the heavens, declarations of a kingdom that rivaled Rome and Persia. This was the Axumite Empire, a naval and commercial powerhouse whose ships dominated the trade lanes between the Mediterranean and India. Their wealth flowed from a monopoly on the most coveted goods of the ancient world: ivory, tortoiseshell, gold, and the fragrant resins of frankincense and myrrh. Historian Stuart Munro Hay captured their strategic genius, noting that Axum's location and naval capabilities allowed it to become a major player in Indian Ocean trade. They were so integrated into the global economy that they minted their own gold, silver, and copper coins, a sophistication that broadcast their sovereignty from the markets of Alexandria to the ports of southern India. Their society was a strict hierarchy ruled by a negus, a king who claimed direct descent from the biblical union of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, a legendary lineage that granted him immense spiritual and political authority. This connection to sacred history was cemented in the 4th century when King Azana converted to Christianity, making Axum one of the very first major empires to embrace the faith, creating a unique religious identity that would define the highlands of Ethiopia for millennia. They were masters of their environment, carving vast staircases of terraced fields into the rugged mountains to prevent erosion and grow enough food to support their urban centers. Their written language, Jais, flourished, recording royal chronicles and religious texts on parchment, and it remains a living language of liturgy in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church today. So how did such a well-connected and devout empire fade from its position of global influence? The decline was a slow turning of the world's economic axis. The rapid expansion of the Islamic caliphates in the 7th and 8th centuries fundamentally rerouted the flow of commerce. As the caliphates unified the Middle East, trade shifted away from the Red Sea and toward the Persian Gulf, slowly starving Axum of its commercial lifeblood. This external pressure was compounded by internal strains, including possible environmental degradation from centuries of intensive agriculture and political fragmentation as central control weakened. The empire gradually retreated from the coast, its power receding into the fortified highlands. Yet its legacy was indelible. The architectural style of its towering stelae and the enduring power of the Ge'ez script became the cultural bedrock for all subsequent Ethiopian kingdoms, preserving a distinct and ancient Christian tradition in the heart of Africa. How does the story of Axum demonstrate that faith and commerce can forge a civilization's soul, and what happens when the routes of that commerce are suddenly and permanently diverted? This interplay of trade, faith, and nomadic power on the steppe would define the rise of an empire that connected the world in a way no one had before. Their golden belt plaques shimmered with the coiled power of steppe panthers, artifacts pulled from burial mounds that dot the landscape from Mongolia to Siberia. This was the world of the Xiongnu, a confederation of nomadic tribes that forged an empire on horseback, a polity so powerful and well-organized that it forced the mighty Han dynasty to its knees and extracted tribute for generations. They were far more than the barbarian raiders of Chinese chronicles. They were sophisticated state builders who mastered the art of governing a vast, decentralized realm. At the head of this intricate system was the Xiongnu, a supreme ruler whose authority was both political and sacred, believed to be sanctioned by the heavens. His power was enforced through a hierarchy of tribal leaders bound by complex ties of kinship and unshakable military loyalty, a system that could mobilize tens of thousands of cavalrymen at a moment's notice. Archaeologist Brian Miller emphasizes that the Xiongnu were not just raiders, they were state builders who engaged in diplomacy, trade, and crafted a distinctive material culture that blended local and foreign elements. Their wealth flowed from a three-part economy rooted in the pastoralism of their vast herds, the generous tribute paid by a defensive China, and their strategic control over key segments of the Silk Road steppes. This economic engine funded a vibrant artistic tradition, seen in exquisite goldwork and elaborate felt appliques that adorned their elite. Their military prowess was so formidable that it directly prompted the Qin and Han dynasties to connect and reinforce the fortifications we now know as the Great Wall, a monumental defensive response to a fluid and unstoppable threat. So how did such a powerful steppe empire eventually fracture? The decline was a story of relentless external pressure and internal strain. Sustained military campaigns by a resurgent Han dynasty, employing their own nomadic allies, slowly eroded Xiongnu unity. More critically, the Confederation's very strength, its decentralized structure based on loyal tribes, became a weakness when succession disputes and rivalries fragmented the leadership. As their political cohesion shattered, some groups were absorbed by China, while others began a long migration westward, their movements possibly setting off domino effects that would ripple through Central Asia and into European history, influencing the tumultuous era of migrations. The story of the Xiongnu forces us to reconsider the very nature of empire. What can their model of nomadic statecraft, built on mobility, reciprocity, and kinship, teach us about alternatives to the sedentary, wall-building empires we so often focus on? Their legacy demonstrates that power on the steppe was not just about conquest, but about the genius of binding diverse peoples into a single, formidable will. This theme of a powerful, mobile confederation finds a deep echo further east, in the lands of another people who mastered the horse and the bow. The Sogdian merchant could bargain in a dozen tongues, his words weaving a tapestry of commerce from the Great Wall of China to the gates of Byzantium. In the bustling caravanserais of Samarkand and Bukhara, the air thick with the scent of spices and sandalwood, these masters of the Silk Road did not merely move goods, they moved ideas. Their civilization, centered in the fertile oasis valleys of modern Uzbekistan and Tajikistan, was a vibrant network of independent city-states, each governed by a wealthy class of merchant princes whose power came not from land but from the flow of trade. Historian Etienne de Lavaisière confirms that for centuries, the Sogdians were the primary intermediaries of the Silk Road, spreading religions like Buddhism, Manichaeism, and Nestorian Christianity across the vast expanse of Asia. They were the essential link, the human infrastructure that made the ancient global economy function. Their genius lay in adaptability. A Sogdian trader was almost certainly multilingual, fluent in the languages of his trading partners, and his caravans carried more than just silk and jewels. They transported sacred texts, artistic styles, and technological knowledge, creating a cultural synthesis visible in the vibrant murals of Panjakent, where Buddhist deities might stand beside Zoroastrian fire altars, and scenes from the Persian epic, the Shahnameh. Their own language, written in a script derived from Aramaic, became the lingua franca of commerce for the entire Silk Road, a linguistic glue that held the trade routes together. How did they maintain such a distinct identity while constantly absorbing and transmitting the cultures of others? The answer was their fierce civic pride and the decentralized nature of their power. Each city-state, from Samarkand to Qujand, cultivated its own traditions and loyalties, bound together by a shared commercial culture and a common Sogdian tongue that gave them a portable homeland wherever their business took them. This brilliant, mercantile world, however, could not withstand the tide of a new, unifying faith. The Arab conquests of the 8th century brought armies that subdued the city-states one by one, imposing Islam and slowly erasing their unique religious and linguistic identity through centuries of assimilation. Yet their legacy was woven too deeply into the fabric of Asia to vanish entirely. Their trading networks became the blueprint for the Islamic Golden Age that followed. Their artistic motifs influenced Persian miniatures, and their commercial techniques were adopted by merchants from Venice to Canton. The story of the Sogdians raises a profound question about the nature of cultural exchange. Can a civilization built entirely on connection and mediation survive the rise of a new, uncompromising power? Their role as the great connectors of Eurasia sets the stage for another, even more enigmatic Silk Road power that would rise from the harsh deserts to the east. Their faces are a startling sight in the museum cases, fair-haired and tall, dressed in brilliantly colored woolen textiles that defy the centuries. These Tarim Basin mummies were a people utterly out of place, a branch of the Indo-European family tree that took root in the heart of Asia, in what is now the desolate expanse of western China. They were the Tocharians, and their oasis cities were lush islands of green in a sea of sand, vital way stations on the ancient Silk Road. Here, they cultivated orchards and fields using sophisticated irrigation canals, creating an agricultural surplus that fed their vibrant urban life. Their world was a symphony of cultural fusion. In their cave temples at places like Kizil, Buddhist monks painted murals where the serene faces of the Buddha wore a faint Greco-Roman smile, a legacy of Alexander the Great's long-vanished eastern colonies. Their own art blended Persian motifs with influences from India and China, a visual record of a society that existed at the ultimate crossroads. Linguist J. P. Mallory points to their language as the key puzzle, an easternmost branch of Indo-European that challenges everything we thought we knew about ancient migration. How did a language related to Latin and Celtic end up spoken in the Taklamakan Desert? Their society was likely a network of independent city-states, each ruled by its own king and supported by a mixed economy of farming and long-distance trade. They were not just passive recipients of foreign ideas, but active participants, translating Buddhist scriptures from Sanskrit into their own tongue and leaving behind manuscripts that reveal a deeply literate and spiritually complex culture. Yet for all their distinctiveness, the Tocharians were destined to be absorbed. The gradual southward movement of Turkic-speaking peoples, combined with the relentless pressure of a drying climate on their fragile oasis homes, slowly eroded their unique identity. Their languages, once the talk of the bazaars from Kucha to Turfan, fell silent by the end of the first millennium, replaced by Turkic dialects. Their physical legacy, those hauntingly preserved mummies, forces us to redraw the mental map of the ancient world. What does their presence tell us about the true diversity of Central Asia? It reveals a continent far more interconnected, and its human tapestry far more complex than our simple divisions of East and West can contain. Their story is a ghostly reminder that languages and peoples have always been on the move, and that the borders we draw on maps are often illusions. The spice-laden winds of the Strait of Malacca carried more than just the scent of cloves and pepper. They carried the lifeblood of an invisible empire. For over 6 centuries, the kingdom of Srivijaya dominated these waters from its heart in Sumatra, a thalassocracy whose power was written not in stone monuments, but in the timbers of its warships and the ledgers of its port masters. This was a realm that mastered the art of controlling the choke point, the narrow sea lane through which all trade between China and India had to pass. Every vessel laden with Chinese silk or Indian cotton was subject to the Srivijayan navy, compelled to pay hefty tariffs at their fortified ports in exchange for safe passage and protection from pirates. Historian O.W. Walters captured their genius, noting that Srivijaya's influence extended across Southeast Asia, with its rulers adept at using diplomacy and naval power to maintain hegemony over rival ports. Their authority was a subtle blend of intimidation and invitation, a promise of security and a threat of force that kept a sprawling network of coastal cities and trading posts firmly under their influence. This wealth funded a cosmopolitan world where Chinese porcelain sat beside Indian bronzes and where merchants from Arabia haggled with traders from the Khmer Empire. The Srivijayan elite were not just warlords, they were fervent patrons of Mahayana Buddhism, transforming their capital into a major center of learning that attracted scholars and monks from across Asia. Inscriptions on stone pillars speak of kings performing elaborate Buddhist rituals and building monasteries, using spiritual authority to bolster their political power and create a shared cultural identity across their maritime domain. So what could possibly dismantle such a well-entrenched and prosperous system? The empire's decline in the 13th century was a slow unraveling of its own success. The very trade routes that enriched Srivijaya also empowered its rivals. The rise of the Majapahit Empire on Java offered an alternative political and commercial center, while new maritime technologies and navigational knowledge allowed some traders to bypass the Malacca Strait altogether. Furthermore, the growing economic might of China under the Song dynasty began to shift the balance of power, making Srivijaya more of a client than a master of the trade winds. Their power, so perfectly adapted to controlling a specific geographic point, faded when the map of commerce itself was redrawn. Yet their legacy is profound, deeply embedded in the Malay language, maritime laws, and cultural traditions that persist throughout the archipelago. How does a civilization built entirely on the flow of commerce maintain its identity when those currents suddenly change direction? This final question of maritime dominance and cultural endurance finds a powerful, haunting echo not in the islands of Southeast Asia, but in the misty coastal forests of North America, where our journey ends with a people who also drew their power and identity from the sea. The ceremonial complex at Spiro Mounds was a place of profound power, where elite priest chiefs were laid to rest with a stunning array of ritual objects. Shell gorgets etched with a weeping eye, polished mace heads of gleaming copper, and capes of iridescent feathers spoke of a society that saw the material and spiritual worlds as one. This was the world of the Mississippian culture, a vast network of chiefdoms that transformed the American Midwest and Southeast from roughly 800 to 1600 CE. Their towns were organized around central plazas, dominated by massive, flat-topped earthen mounds. These were not burial mounds in the traditional sense, but elevated platforms for the homes of rulers, temples for the gods, and stages for the public ceremonies that bound society together. At the summit of these great earthworks, a priest chief would stand, mediating between his people and the supernatural forces that governed the harvest, the weather, and life itself. Their entire society was fueled by a revolutionary crop, maize. The adoption of intensive corn agriculture produced the food surplus necessary to support urban centers like Cahokia, which we visited earlier, and allow for the specialization of craftspeople, warriors, and a ruling elite. This agricultural revolution reshaped the landscape and enabled a new level of social complexity. As archaeologist George Milner observed, the Mississippian world was interconnected through shared religious symbols, known as the Southern Ceremonial Complex. This was a visual language of power that stretched across thousands of miles, depicting otherworldly beings, such as the avian warrior known as the birdman, and sacred rituals involving ceremonial maces and severed heads. A shell cup carved in Arkansas would feature the same supernatural figures as a copper plate hammered in Georgia, creating a shared ideological framework that facilitated trade and interaction. Their economy was a sophisticated web of exchange, moving marine shells from the Gulf Coast, copper from the Great Lakes, and mica from the Appalachians along riverine highways. These were not just trade goods, they were embodiments of spiritual power, materials destined to be transformed into the sacred regalia that validated the authority of the ruling class. The arrival of Europeans in the 16th century shattered this world. Explorers and colonists introduced old-world diseases for which the native population had no immunity, triggering catastrophic demographic collapse. The intricate social and political hierarchies, dependent on a large, settled population and the authority of the priest chiefs, crumbled under the weight of epidemic and the violent disruptions of the colonial frontier. Yet, the Mississippian culture did not simply vanish. Its people are the ancestors of many modern Native American nations, including the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, and Cherokee. Their legacy lives on in the stomp dances, the stickball games, and the oral traditions that have been passed down through generations. The story of the Mississippians and all the civilizations we have explored forces a humbling realization. Human history is not a single, linear narrative of progress, but a tapestry of countless experiments in living, each with its own genius and its own vulnerabilities. How many more stories are waiting silently beneath the earth, ready to rewrite the story of us all? A single, stark pattern emerges from the dust of 25 lost worlds. From the Indus Valley to the Mississippian culture, each civilization was a unique answer to the fundamental question of how to live, yet their stories are bound by common threads that stretch across continents and millennia. They all mastered the art of survival within their specific environments, whether through the hydraulic genius of the Khmer or the desert diplomacy of the Nabateans. Their lifeblood was the flow of trade and ideas along routes like the Silk Road, and their minds were sharpened by innovations from the standardized brick to the alphabetic script. Yet, time and again, we see these brilliant adaptations tested by forces that feel unnervingly familiar. Historian Jared Diamond framed these challenges as a quartet of collapse factors: environmental damage, climate change, hostile neighbors, and a society's capacity to respond. The Moche watched their engineered canals turn against them in biblical floods, while the Mycenaeans saw their centralized bureaucracy shatter under drought and raiders. But this framework is not a story of passive victims. Modern archaeology reveals the profound agency and resilience of these peoples. The ancestral Puebloans did not vanish. They made a deliberate choice to migrate and preserve their community. The legacy of Kush lived on in the waterwheels that fed later empires. Their declines were rarely simple endings, but more often transformations, a dispersal of people and knowledge that seeded future cultures. The deepest secrets these societies left behind are not just locked in undeciphered scripts like those of the Indus or Rongorongo, but in the very stone and earth of their choices. They reveal a stunning truth that human development has never been a single path. The collective, kingless society of the Indus Valley and the collaborative network of the Hopewell prove that complexity does not require an emperor. How can these ancient experiments inform our own precarious moment? They teach us that the greatest vulnerability may lie in a society's inability to adapt when its core strengths, whether a centralized economy or a specific water management system, become rigid in the face of change. Their stories are a long-term laboratory of human experience, offering hard-won lessons in sustainability, the fragility of interconnected trade, and the enduring power of cultural knowledge. The silent cities and overgrown temples are not just relics, they are a mirror, asking us what foundations we are building our own world upon, and what secrets future generations might one day uncover about us. The echoes of these 25 worlds are not simply ghost stories of ruin. They are a sprawling library of human ingenuity, a record of countless experiments in building a society. Each one, from the hydraulic cities of the Khmer to the nomadic confederations of the Xiongnu, wove a unique thread into the vast tapestry of our shared history. Their contributions did not vanish with their cities. The Phoenician alphabet forms the very words you hear today. The Kushite waterwheel revolutionized agriculture, and the philosophical questions posed by the kingless Indus Valley still challenge our modern assumptions about power. These legacies are all around us, silent foundations of our contemporary world. Our ability to hear their stories grows sharper with each passing year. Ground-penetrating radar, satellite imagery, and LiDAR technology are peeling back the jungle canopy and the desert sands, revealing entire cities we never knew existed. Genetic analysis is tracing the migrations of their peoples, and new decipherments of ancient scripts promise to finally unlock voices silenced for millennia. Every discovery has the power to challenge a textbook assumption and force us to rethink the human journey. Let these lost civilizations be an invitation. Let them inspire you to look deeper, to question the standard narratives of history, and to marvel at the breathtaking diversity of human achievement. Our journey does not have to end here. If this exploration into the depths of time has sparked your curiosity, consider subscribing for more deep dives into history's greatest mysteries. We would love to hear which of these civilizations captured your imagination the most, so share your thoughts in the comments below. The past is not a closed book. It is a living conversation, and with every fragment we uncover, we add a new line to the story.